What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of Thoughts from the Movies. Josh Elsass is letting me celeb shot today with the hosting, so he's joining me, and of course, Austin Moorhead with us as well, as usual. This week, Austin's pick, one of the best effing movies of all time, the Pittsburgh-filmed Silence of the Lambs. And boys, we're gonna do a little bit different format today. Okay, here's how we're gonna do it. Quid pro quo. I tell you things, you tell me things. That's how we're doing it today. No, it's going to be a great show.
Have you ever gotten cheeseburgers before?
If only we had Tony Hopkins saying that. That'd be fantastic. No, it's going to be a great show. We got some cool clips we're going to dissect and great conversation. So let's dive into it, boys. First of all, so the world of Hannibal Lecter, right? It became a bunch of movies that were based on books and a TV show as well that was very highly reviewed. What is your familiarity with this world and the character? I had only seen Silence of the Lambs and the sequel Hannibal, which are movies 2 and 3 out of 4. So before we get into it, who was green? What did you guys know going in?
For me personally, I've seen just about everything involved with this. I've seen Silence of the Lambs, I've seen Hannibal, I've seen The Red Dragon, and I'm currently 2 episodes away from finishing the Hannibal series. So you could say I'm pretty green lit for this conversation. Everything about this world, so to speak, is downright amazing. Hannibal Lecter is one of my favorite characters in movies and television. I can't wait to talk about this with you guys, honestly.
Nice. And had you seen Manhunter, the film?
Yes. For a second, I thought you were talking about the TV show, but yes, I have seen Manhunter, the movie. Yes.
Nice. So you're all into this world. Josh, Hannibal.
First time I've seen anything.
First time for anything?
Anything.
Oh my god.
And the reason I was turned around is I'm pretty sure Red Dragon is on my DVD shelf.
Is it really?
I'm almost 100% sure.
That would be amazing if it was.
I think I bought it. I bought the series for my dad, who loved these movies, and I never watched them, and I don't know what happened to Hannibal or Silence of the Lambs or whatever the other one is, but I definitely have the Red Dragon on my bookshelf behind me.
Okay. Yeah, so it goes, the book series was Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal, Red Dragon, which was a prequel about how he sort of was first caught, and then Hannibal Rising, which is him as a youth and how he became Hannibal that way. But all were adapted
into movies.
I like
the Batman title.
Yeah.
Hannibal Rising.
Is
there another masked man that talks with a funny accent in that one? Hannibal Lecter. Your mask is as good as mine.
And then there's 20 people going, what did he say?
What did he say?
What?
Tom Hardy, you're like 12. How'd you get in this movie?
Yeah. By the way, who'd make a great young Hannibal is Tom Hardy. That's a whole other thing.
That would be true.
At some point, but yeah, that would be awesome.
More Tom Hardy in everything is what I ask in life.
So, Silence of the Lambs, everyone's likely already seen it, but this takes place. It was shot in 1991, and the story is about Jodie Foster's character, the famous Clarice Starling, who in this movie is an FBI trainee, and she is tasked with profiling Hannibal Lecter, serial killer / genius psychologist, in the hopes that he will help them, the FBI, track down a serial killer named Buffalo Bill, who is killing young girls and skinning them, and what we'll come to find out later is making a suit of their skin because he secretly has trans intentions, I guess. But about this movie, very well-known movie, one of the most iconic of all time. There's a couple cool pieces of Oscar trivia I wanted to share with you guys because I don't know if you know this, but it's very well-known for a couple of these. The first is that I have to correct a mistake that I said last week at the end of our Uncut Gems TFTM, and I said that Anthony Hopkins was in this movie for only 8 minutes when he won Best Actor, and I was actually confusing that with Judi Dench winning her Oscar for 8 minutes in Shakespeare in Love. He's in this one for about 16 minutes, and it's actually the second shortest performance to ever win Best Actor. First was David Niven in 1958 for Separate Places, but still 16 minutes, Best Actor, second shortest for that win, which is really cool. It's also well known for being one of only 3 movies, and the most recent one, to have won the big 5 Oscars, which are Best Picture, Actor, Actress, Director, and Screenplay. The other 2 were One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in the 70s.
Love that movie.
And It Happened One Night from the 30s with Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. So this was the most recent to do that, and that was almost 30 years ago. And then the other thing, which is just amazing to me, we talked not too long ago about how sci-fi movies don't always do too well at the Oscars.
Yes.
For horror movies, only 6 have ever been nominated for Best Picture. Best Picture. This is the only one to actually win. Do you guys want to take a guess at the other 5 horror movies, at any of them?
Well, is Parasite not one?
Parasite is like it's a social thriller. It's not exactly a horror movie.
And wasn't Get Out one?
Get Out was one of the 5, yes, and that's sort of in the same vein, right? Any other guesses? Austin, horror movie, Best Picture over the years?
This is my bread and butter, and for some reason I'm coming up short. I was going to say Get Out, and Parasite to me, like I said, seemed more psychological thriller than horror.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting because...
Wait. I want one more stab at this.
Yeah. I'll give you a hint. There were 2 in the 70s.
I thought Halloween might be one of them.
Not Halloween. That's a great guess because that's an awesome movie.
Okay, all right.
But, so, going back to the 70s, you have The Exorcist and Jaws.
Duh.
And then in the 90s, you have The Sixth Sense.
Duh.
And in the 2000s, you have Black Swan and Get Out.
Okay,
and those are
Black
interesting
Swan's
because
not a horror movie.
Those are kind of like psychological thrillers that get lumped into horror, sort of.
Yeah, okay.
But this one is not exactly full horror either. And this is a question I was going to ask later, but while we're on the subject, did you guys, when you were watching it, did you feel like you had watched a horror movie, or was it more of the thriller type of movie to you?
Austin?
Interesting question. Yeah, I would say it is more psychological thriller than it is horror. But it's primarily based on horror elements, serial killers, showing the bodies and everything of how they work. You have that limit of gore, which I know you very much appreciate, Justin.
Yeah, love cutting back on the blood. That's great.
But yeah, for me, I would have to agree that while this is considered a horror movie and has horror elements, I think this is a more psychological thriller than it is horror.
This is a horror movie in 1991. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Because this is nothing now. This is nothing. Like, that was Child's Play. That's on Glee on ABC. Like, no. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think in 1991 it's a horror movie, but not in 2020.
Interesting. And yeah, like you said, Austin, there wasn't too much blood and killing. I think there's actually only 8 or 9 deaths total in the movie, and only a couple of them are actually on screen. So even though there is a bit of that, more happens off screen than does on screen.
Yeah.
But let's dive into it here. So as mentioned, Jodie Foster's character, Clarice Starling, goes to speak to Hannibal Lecter and see what she can glean from him about Buffalo Bill. And it's interesting because they only have 4 scenes together in the whole movie. There's 4 conversations, and we'll pull up some clips later of those and kind of get into them. But first, Josh, I want to go to you first because this is your first glimpse or your first real look at Hannibal Lecter and Clarice Starling, who I'm sure you've heard those names over the course of your life and career. So your initial reactions, they first show up, she's immediately off the bat, and then Hannibal's about 11 minutes in. So take us through that first interaction and what you felt and like your reaction to those 2 characters.
When I was watching it, was like, I don't trust this chick to go toe-to-toe with this super genius serial killer crafty guy who her boss warns her about, who the doctor warns her about, who the guard warns her about. Like, they build this guy up to be this super villain, and they're just letting no, she's not even a rookie. She hasn't even graduated from the academy yet. Right. Go toe-to-toe with her. They did not do, and I never say this because I'm always like, let's get into it. They did not do enough to set her up at the beginning of the movie to lead me to believe that she could go toe-to-toe with him. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see her, because, like, even when we see her, like, yeah, she's physically fit, but what's that have to do with her mind? You know what I mean? Like, they kind of give her background as far as what she studied in school, but, like, I needed more to know that because she does not back down in that scene. She's toe-to-toe with him, going back and forth, like, picking apart his riddles and shit. So like I needed to know that she's maybe not on his level, but is at least a fair sparring opponent.
Okay.
There could have been more done for that. But that first scene, holy shit.
Right?
Get your fucking diaper.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I have written down, Anthony Hopkins is terrifying. That was the only note I made.
Yeah. That sums it up, though.
Shit.
That sums it up. Yeah. You know what's funny? He was actually, I read this bit of trivia afterwards, he was dating Martha Stewart at the time, and after this movie came up, she broke up with him because she couldn't distinguish, like, she couldn't not see Hannibal Lecter when she was with him.
I wonder how much
he was so good in this
pulled.
movie, he ended his relationship with Martha Stewart.
I wonder how much he borrowed since he was dating a sociopath. I wonder how much he borrowed.
A sociopath who likes to cook, yes.
You know what's a cool little trivia thing is that the guy who wrote the books, okay, has never seen this movie.
Yep.
Because he's afraid that, I guess there was like some other writer, and it's all slipping my mind now because, it's after 7 and my brain shuts off. But there was another writer who saw an actor perform his character and he felt like he didn't own the character anymore. So that's why he refused to see this movie, because he felt that he knew basically that Anthony Hopkins did such a great job that he was going to feel like the character wasn't his anymore. And then he wouldn't be able to write any more books. So I thought that was really, like, what a tip of the hat to Anthony Hopkins. And, I mean, it's...
Austin, can you tell us, like, about the other, because you've seen other Hannibal works, like the TV show and everything, can you compare the Hannibals and maybe the Clarices? Like, is Clarice in the TV show or no? I don't know.
No. So Clarice is only in, which I believe is the Hannibal. She's only in that one, and she's only in Silence of the Lambs. Okay. Whereas Will Graham is, we'll I don't know if we'll talk about today or not, but he's in Red Dragon, and he is also one of the main characters in the Hannibal TV show.
And he's like an agent who first captured him or something?
Well, yeah, so it's interesting. This is where we get into some muddy waters, because in Red Dragon, he was the first one to discover that Hannibal Lecter was a psychopath and was killing off his patients. Okay. In the TV series, Will Graham is not an agent. He is simply there because what he does is he can get inside the mind of serial killers. So basically, it's like a little pendulum when he closes his eyes, and he reenacts the scene entirely in his head, and we see it. So it's masterful, it's terrifying, and honestly, if he wasn't associated with Jack Crawford, he would have been a serial killer. That they have made that quite aware. That he...
Oh, shit. Okay, so that's the character on Mindhunter.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Click. Got it all. All right. We're connected now. I understand.
For the Hannibal of the TV show, who's played by Mads Mikkelsen, who's a fantastic Danish actor, does he tell us a little bit about him? Because the things that make Anthony Hopkins' performance as Hannibal Lecter so amazing are all the little tics that he has. It's like he only blinks consciously at specific moments. He does these little things to get inside and just to add to the character that he's ad-libbed. I mean, can you compare the two a little bit and talk about maybe some of the differences or similarities?
Wait a minute. Do they call Anthony Hopkins Tony Hopkins? Is that a real thing?
Yes, that's what they call him.
They only say that because there's, like, if they say Anthony Hopkins, they just picture Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
They had to give him a nickname. He was so freaking good.
Well, I'm not going to call him Sir Anthony. I would do that, by the way. I'd be like, it's Sir Justin.
Yes, exactly.
But, Austin, the different Hannibals, do they have any similarities, or is this one purely unique in the movie?
I think that the original, Anthony Hopkins was played in, and then, help me say if I'm saying this right, Mads Mikkelsen? Is that how it is?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that he didn't want to be what was known as, your Hannibal Lecter rerun. He wanted to redefine the image in his own way, and he has the perfect way to do it. He has the accent, like very beautiful accent. He essentially is terrifying without making any facial, like there's his face is never changing throughout the entire series. It's astonishing to me.
Okay.
They even have a lot of scenes where they show his cooking, and he will legitimately go to his recipe books, pull out the recipe, and then right next to it is a list of business cards or cards from people that he has killed, and he'll decide which meal goes with which person.
Wow.
It's very, it's very dark, honestly. The whole show, compared to the movie, is more imagery based. It's a lot of like really psychological, in your head. A lot with the Will Graham scenes will more or less frighten you if you're not a horror buff or like big like fan of the Hannibal character. Like if you don't know what you're looking for and you watch this series, you will shut it off because you will be terrified.
Well, let me pull it back to the Anthony Hopkins version though, because it's interesting that he's only in the movie for 16 minutes, which is like 14% of the 2-hour movie, right? But did you guys feel like he was in it for longer than he was, just because it resonates so strongly?
His presence is in it.
Yep.
What?
His presence is in it.
Yeah, like
His
he's
name
over
is in
everything.
it. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Like you get through the end and you're like, I can't believe he only had those 4 scenes with Clarice Starling. But not to be outdone by the third of the, not third main character, but third most memorable character, Buffalo Bill, played by Ted Levine, a.k.a. the captain from Monk with the mustache. But how did you guys feel about him?
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
You can't just blow by that he's in Monk.
Yeah, he's Captain Stottlemyre.
Son of a bitch, he is.
Adrian. Yeah. Yeah, that's him. Adrian put the lotion on the basket.
I think that, I really think that Buffalo Bill is the inspiration for McMurray and Letterkenny. Where now are you know? Yeah. I'll smack you. Like that's like every line that Buffalo Bill was delivering. I kind of like took it away from me a little bit because I just imagined McMurray in his white tight t-shirt going, where now are you know? You know?
Yeah.
Brush his hair, you know?
Well, Sid, they have a really interesting dynamic, the 3 characters in Silence of the Lambs, right? Because Hannibal and Clarice have 4 scenes together, as we mentioned, and they're always separated in a prison scenario. And Buffalo Bill only has 1 scene with Clarice, an extended sequence at the end when she finds him in his house, right?
Right.
What did you guys, of the 3 characters, I mean, Hannibal we know and Clarice obviously, but with Buffalo Bill too, is there anyone that you guys really were drawn more towards just for that character specifically? You thought was more interesting or just a more attractive, unique character?
Awesome.
Here's what I'll say to this, because the obvious answer for me is Hannibal, but what I will say is the ending scene with Buffalo Bill where he is putting on the suit and doing his dance was masterful. Everything about it was pivoting, like almost like a force in your brain that was being struck. Because I will say this, they have come out and said that he was so nervous, and this is another piece of trivia, that he was so nervous about doing this scene that he actually got drunk on tequila while he was doing this scene.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Nice.
he was taking like how many shots of tequila before he would do the scene. I mean, that it would scare anybody.
You're talking about the scene where he's dancing naked?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
as people know, Buffalo Bill's goal is to become a transsexual, or, he's a man who wants to be a woman but hasn't been able to get reassignment surgery because of his mental issues, so he builds a suit of skin from the girls that he kills, and then at the end he's like doing a naked dance in front of a video camera in like his clothes and makeup and everything like that.
Yeah.
But
But
did that scene really make it more visceral to you guys? Like, because you had heard before that he had those goals and those intentions, but when you really see it, did that have like sort of a hit you in the gut reaction, or was it not really?
You want to take this first?
No.
It's certainly disturbing imagery, but
I think in some things in this movie did not age well, and Buffalo Bill being trans did not age well, and his motivations to become trans did not age well. In 2020, with trans lives being in danger every day, unfortunately, there's a lot of political charge to that. And so much so that the director has come out and feels like he could have portrayed it better on film. That Buffalo Bill is not a trans person or somebody who wants to change because they feel legitimately that they should have been born the opposite gender. He's just a deeply disturbed sociopath. And there's just not... In 2020, that scene falls a little short for me. Yeah. Not to take the piss and fun out of the movie, but I want to say that wholeheartedly.
Okay. Yeah, because I think they say his motivations are that he hates himself so much as a man and just everything about him. That's why he kind of decides to go the other way with it. But Austin, how did that scene strike you when you finally first saw it, I guess?
Well, it's like Josh said. I'm in the middle of the road for this one, and I'll take his explanation with how it didn't. For me, for the other half of it, for the yes, it just shows you how disturbed and twisted the mind of this character actually was. And you never, really know what you're going to get when you, pull the wool over, or pull the curtain back or anything like that. But when it's presented in front of you, it's a very shocking, twisting road down the human psyche that we look at it and we're like, whoa.
Definitely.
This guy, yeah. I think I will agree with what he said that, yeah, in 2020, this particular scene did not age well with most of us, the communities and everything. But it's more of the less that he hates himself so much for himself that he decides to go into the other route for it.
Well, on that note of how disturbed that character is, Josh, are we able to pull up that clip?
Yeah, it's playing now.
Okay, so it's going now?
Yep.
Great. So this is the first clip where we're in Buffalo Bill's house, and it shows so many things about this character, which is great. It started off there with all the moths and how he was taking care of them, and then went to the surgical table to show how he was, dismembering and skinning his victims, and it has all these different outfits for females on mannequins, and then you have him sitting in a sewing machine, which is foreshadowing what he's doing with the suit, which obviously we don't see until later. And then, you're in this dingy, disgusting, it really looks like, a hole in the ground, and it literally, there is the sort of dungeon of his own house. So I love that scene because instead of just cutting to Buffalo Bill, it shows so much about his character when they could have just
talked about it.
Yes. I mean, when you guys were watching that, did you really feel like a sense of, shit, now I really am getting who this guy is? Or did you see all of the little things, in the fish tank, there's a human head in it? When you guys were watching that scene, were you struck by all the detail to it and everything that it revealed?
Justin, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a sucker for a oneer. I will use a oneer as ability to tell a story every day of the week. It builds tension, it builds drama, it forces you to see things exactly what they want you to see. I'm a sucker for a oneer, and there are a few better than that. There are only a few better oneers than that.
Austin, how about you? How'd you feel with that? Did you pick out any of the details, or were you... what did you get out of it?
I was more or less drawn to how the entire scene was focused on what makes this guy who he is rather than this guy. That was the most important thing that scene taught me, was when we go from the moths to the fish tanks to the table, and you only see him for a couple of, I would say, split seconds,
sure,
making the suit, and then you finally go into the essential, well in the ground, with her just screaming out. It builds a lot to, like I said, the broken psyche of a deranged sociopath and psychopath, rather than just showing them in the act. Definitely. I feel like this scene did a wonderful job of establishing this is why, this is when, this is how, this is not what. This is why it makes that.
Well, I don't know if you guys remember this. That scene actually happened pretty far into the movie. I mean, that was over halfway through the movie before we finally go through his whole layer, if you will, right? I mean, I don't know if it would have done better to be earlier on. Do you guys think it would have helped more, or do you like that it was so far along before we finally saw all of Bill's world?
No, because Buffalo Bill's the antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Hannibal. Buffalo Bill's the antagonist of this particular movie. Yes, Hannibal's a bad guy, and he's, arguably one of the greatest villains ever captured on screen. But he's really an ally in this movie, which is awesome and super cool about that. I don't want to talk about that. So, yeah, normally you don't see your main antagonist until at least a quarter of the way into the movie, if not more, right? So, especially in a horror movie or something like that, it's all, setting up how bad this person is, and then when you first see them, it's supposed to be, the worst thing in the world, right? And a lot of horror movies fall under fire for showing their bad guy too early or showing too much of the bad guy. And this scene even does a great job at that. It's just a naked dude with his back to the camera. That's even creepier.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Love that, yeah. And you know what's interesting? You said that Hannibal's not the bad guy of this movie, and I don't know if you guys read this piece of trivia, but Jonathan Demme, the director, was talking to Anthony Hopkins about the role, and Anthony Hopkins was having a hard time wrapping his head around the character as a bad guy, and Jonathan Demme goes, he's a good man, but he's trapped in a psycho's mind. What do you guys think of that? Because I thought that was a really interesting way to look at this character, because Hannibal in this movie is sort of an anti-hero. He's a psychotic murderer who eats his victims, but he's also, there's something so charismatic and something you like about him being the smartest person in the room. So that description of being a good man trapped inside a psycho's mind, how does that resonate with you now, having, being able to consider that definition as opposed to just probably having thought of Hannibal Lecter as a villain before that? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree?
I think this is one of the only times that I'm going to have to disagree with you, Justin.
Okay.
I believe that a good man in a psycho's mind is different from a very intelligent being knowing that he's intelligent and knowing he's the smartest in the room and knowing all the terrible things that he's done. The good qualities about him that he presents do not counteract the acts that he has committed. I will say that you can be vastly intelligent but be shallow and cold inside. And he is personally only interested in doing this to, number one, get inside somebody else's head, and number two, affiliate his own agenda.
Okay.
I will argue that I love the character, and yes, he is an anti-hero in this for the plot format, but he is not a good man. This is a dangerous dude that wants to make you think that he is a good man.
But he does certain admirable things, he protects Clarice in certain ways, and, he has a thing about politeness and the way you treat people. I mean,
I think Austin, I think it's hard to separate everything you know about the character and the entire arc that you know him from all the movies and shows and all that kind of stuff.
Also correct, yeah.
But in Silence of the Lambs, the movie, just that, he is so much more of a Darth Vader type character where he has some honor to him and he has people that he's trying to protect. If you think about it, Darth Vader's never trying to kill Luke. He's just trying to get Luke on his side, right? And Hannibal Lecter is trying to protect and help Clarice from a truly evil person. I think that's the difference. I think he's more of akin to Darth Vader than he is to the the wait for the creme guy in Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, Hans Landa.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, interesting. So you would agree with that he is a good man in a psycho's mind?
Yes. In this movie.
In this movie.
In this movie, absolutely.
That's fair. Yeah.
I don't know if I still feel that. I feel that I get what you're saying. I just think that he becomes fixated on something that he's never really encountered before. They talked about that they've sent all these actual FBI agents to interrogate him and all these higher ups, and now he finally has the opportunity to learn and process information through someone that's below the ranking. And I think that's more of a challenge for him to get everything done.
You don't think that because it's a young, sort of naive woman that there's no genuine feeling of interest and protection in him, Austin, when he meets Clarice? You think it's all just manipulation?
I understand the point of that. I'm saying that let's consider him in animal terms. I consider him a fox in this. He's very sly, very keen, very he talks to you nice. He's very not very pretentious. He's very not egocentric. But no, that Fox's true intention when it gets out of the house.
I agree with Austin that he's intrigued by her, but in the entire movie, he's the only one that treats her as an equal.
That's true.
And she, in turn, shows him a level of respect
by
only calling him Dr. Lecter or Hannibal Lecter, aside from when she first gets the assignment and calls him Hannibal the Cannibal. But in the entire trilogy, in all the films that she's in, I guess it's only 2, she always refers to him as either Dr. Lecter or Hannibal Lecter, which is, not using his nickname, a sign of respect on her part. So I think there is some mutual, like Josh said, mutual respect between them, or interest at least, what have you.
Yeah.
But let's stick with their dynamic, which is really interesting. I want to pull up another clip. Not yet, not just yet, though.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to pull up a clip of the first time Hannibal and Clarice meet, about 10 minutes into the movie, and this is part of their first interaction. And there was you can actually go ahead and roll it once you get it pulled up.
Okay.
But what's interesting is that there was another piece of trivia I read about the way that it was blocked and shot, this film. And a lot of it, what happens is, when Clarice is having dialogues with certain people, the camera will be straight on the person she's talking to. And right now, you'll notice, Anthony Hopkins is staring straight into the lens. When it's on Clarice, you'll notice she's looking slightly off camera. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is the director wants to create more of the audience being from Clarice's point of view, to identify with her a little bit more, which is why everyone's speaking directly to the camera while she is speaking slightly off camera. Did you guys maybe identify with her a little bit in her character more because of that? I mean, it would probably be subconsciously, but do you feel like you identify with Clarice's character more? And I'm curious if this affected your perception of their relationship.
Austin?
I would think so. I mean, most of some of the movie is basically told through the eyes of Clarice Starling. So you are seeing virtually everything that she is coming across, and you feel that because it almost feels like you are being talked to. You are being looked at as maybe unworthy of the job because we see that a lot, especially with male police officers in this film. They'll look at her a certain way that probably they wouldn't look a man that does the job or anything like that. And you feel that a little bit of divide between characters, and I would necessarily say, it brings you toward the character a lot, especially after their conversation, when everything that happened and she runs, walks to the car, has the little flashback, and she's just crying on the side of the car because at that moment, she got in way too deep. She got broke.
Josh, would you agree with that? Did you identify with her a little bit, or maybe not?
I don't know.
If not, it's cool. I mean, this is more of a production thing.
I don't know that I necessarily... It made me identify with her as much as it gave me a real look at how... And I guess it is. A real look on how those characters are going to play out, right? the eyes of like her boss are always like kind of looking down a little bit at her, right? Like even like the guard who's like, you're gonna do fine, like she's looking up at him slightly. And I hate POV shots. This movie used them really well.
A lot of them.
Yeah. And here's why I want to go back to this clip. This shot bugged the shit out of me when they cut to it.
At the end of the scene, yeah.
I hate it because he's so menacing here, right?
Sure.
Like that is terrifying.
Yeah.
And then like when he gets like to this point, it's like, okay, James Dean is here. Like who fucking cares? You know what I mean? And
okay.
And so for me, that like Hannibal Lecter was the only character that is, you know, eye level with the camera and is delivering these incredible back and forth kind of thing with them. And I just really appreciate the way they shot Hannibal Lecter. And any time they weren't head on with him, I was mad. And
Sure.
I attribute this to Jonathan Demme being a TV director.
Okay.
He did TV shows before this, and there's a lot of shots in this movie that feel like a fucking TV show. And as good as there's some great shots, there's like some shit that's like, why did we slide on this TV? Just show the TV. We didn't fucking need that. Or like he cuts because he feels like in a TV show to keep interest, you gotta cut.
Yes.
Especially in the 90s, right? We're not in cinema TV yet. We're not in Breaking Bad, Mad Men, that kind of thing. So, I feel like he cut too much. Like, do a separate shot. You didn't need it. It was so, like, intoxicating.
Yeah.
Like, you felt how powerful he was in those shots. And so, yeah. So, yes, I agree that they were a good form of storytelling. Did not necessarily make me associate with her. Jonathan Demme is a TV director.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm going to bring this back. Austin made a good point. He mentioned the divide between characters. And I want to talk about the setting and production design for a second, because all the crew on this movie were top of the line people throughout their entire career, from the music to the cinematographer, everybody. Production designer's name was Christy Z. And Josh, can you pull up that still frame? So
Yeah.
in the first scene, they made a choice to have Clarice and Hannibal separated, not by the typical jail cell, but by a plastic or glass divide, which is really interesting. Not only does it let you do amazing freaking shots like this, where you have the reflection in the mirror, but it also creates an intimacy between the characters, because
Yes.
they're not divided by those bars. And then, can we bring up the next clip?
Absolutely.
So we're going to go to that's one of the earlier conversations. Now you can roll this. This is their last interaction when Hannibal has been caught, and he is full on in bars now. Not only is the framing of this scene ridiculously amazing with the jail cell bars, but you'll note there's kind of like an added layer of distance to them. Not only is there the bars in between them, but she's actually behind a barrier, standing behind them. So I want to ask you guys about the dynamic change there and see if you felt difference watching that first scene versus this scene, if they're a little bit more distant or separate now. Also, what's really interesting about this scene, they were going to put Hannibal in the typical orange jumpsuit or yellow, something like that, standard. Anthony Hopkins said, I want to be in white, so it's more clinical, like he's more of the doctor-patient relationship in this scene, which I thought was a brilliant choice. Plus it becomes more ironic later, because white is a color of purity and innocence, which is why brides always dress in white, and people think of heaven as like white robes and stuff. So when he's all blood splattered later, it's even more jarring. But so I want to specifically talk about the first scene where it's the clear divide versus this scene. Did you guys feel different watching the two of them at all in terms of those surroundings?
I think that adds to the comfortability, hope that came out right, of the characters, because when we first meet the scene between Clarice and Hannibal, she doesn't know what she's getting herself into, and she gets a very frightful experience. I think this one, she's more focused and driven, so she will be able to associate more with Dr. Lecter in this case. And I feel like this was perfect this last scene was absolutely perfect because it feels now that, Hannibal can move freely. He's not almost a stiff, right? And in the first scene, like, he's very stiff and he's very, like, not robotic, but close with his movements and everything, like, more or less to pierce us right away with that stunning work. Whereas I feel this is now he's a little, everything's going according to his plan. He's freely, he can move without ease, and essentially give us an amazing scene with this.
Yeah. He does seem more at ease in this scene, doesn't he? He's very relaxed. He's sort of lounging and saying, talking to her from a relaxed position.
Yeah, because he knows that now that offer that she had on the table is phony, and now he feels like, what do you need me for, Clarice?
That was pretty good. Josh, you look deep in thought over there.
The entire time this scene's happening.
Yes.
First off, I've been in that room. So I'm like, there it is.
The actual room they shot?
Yeah.
At
the Soldiers and Sailors in Oakland.
Yeah, in Oakland.
Which is super cool, but like, it's interesting the way you positioned it, that they're further apart, because that's how it felt. It did not feel like the two of them, like, teaming up anymore, because she's coming to him in a panic, and she's showing more emotion and concern than she shows in the rest of the interactions with him. And he is very cool, like, even more coy with her, less trusting, and that kind of, like, to me, I'm like, no, like, I'm like cheering for them to like become a super crime fighting duo. And so like this scene really does pull them apart so well. And I don't think I recognized why until you brought it up, Justin, but that makes a lot of sense, because she's even a little bit further back from the bars because she knows she can't get fucking close to him. Right. You know what I mean? And like, that's really cool. And then I love his little, and this comes into play after this scene, but it's like his little house. It's like he decorated it to be this bougie little fucking like hut thing in this grand ballroom. Like, it's like he's getting closer to what he inevitably wants and gets. It's just kind of like a really interesting, like, I thought when they pulled him out of the cell and they put him in the jumpsuit, put the fucking mask on him in the iconic scene and nice suit, yada yada yada, I was like, they're just pulling him out of there so that he can eventually escape. Like, that's in my brain. I'm like, this is like the dumb guy move when you let the bad guy out to help you and then the bad guy bites you and then he escapes, right? Sure enough, he does. But this scene in particular, I didn't realize how much more depth it had to it other than the bad guy has to escape. Ex Machina, here we go.
Yeah, total manipulation.
Right.
A totally different type than Ex Machina, which was very subtle. In this, but this one,
I
feel
was
like
using
it's
the
staring
strict
you.
term.
Yeah.
Not the movie.
Yeah. No, I guess. Speaking of his escape, when he...
Speaking of his escape, there's 2 guards with the most fucking dangerous man on the planet. Yeah. Are you kidding?
Yeah, but not only does he escape, cuts the freaking face-off one, throws it on him, and they take him out thinking he's the security guard. Like, when he was in the ambulance and he pulls that face off, were you guys like I was, like, like, it's just, he's wearing another dude's face, he's all bloody and messed up.
Well, it's funny because when he's on the ground, it is, Anthony Hopkins has that famous, like, thinning hairline, right?
Yeah.
And I keep in mind, I've never seen this movie, so I'm like, man, that really looks like that might be Anthony Hopkins' hairline. I was like, wait. Dwight Schrute cuts the fucking mask off of the dummy. This is the scene! I just got really excited!
I almost pulled that clip.
Yeah,
because it's so good.
And I was just waiting for that to happen the entire time. I'm like, ooh, when are they going to find out? When are they going to find out? When are they going to find out?
Yeah, but they really draw it out, don't they? It's fantastic.
They do.
The way the police break in and they find the mutilated bodies and then they go to the elevator and...
And you know what it also reminds me of? When the Joker gets to Harvey Dent.
Interesting. In the hospital?
Yep.
Going through my head, bud. Yep.
Interesting.
We'll get into that later because you have a cool question to ask. But yeah. Very strong Joker vibes. But
Okay. And speaking of insanely scenes that we can't pass up talking about, the night vision scene at the end, when you,
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy, right? Like, Austin, I don't know, because I've seen it before, so the tension's not quite there since I've already seen it, but did you still feel that tension, Austin? Or Josh, what was your reaction to seeing that? I mean,
ahead,
so, I remember the first time I saw it, like, fucking brilliant, and my heart was pounding, just, you could see everything, but knowing that Clarice can't, like, was it the same way for you, Josh, and Austin, did you still feel that?
I feel this way every time I watch this movie, man.
Nice.
It is stunning. It is, like we said, most of the movie is put in the eyes of Clarice Starling, and for the last brief moments, it's taken away and put into the eyes of somebody else. And I thought that was such a brilliant fucking move.
Yeah, great analysis. That's a fantastic point.
Yep.
Josh, was your heart thumping?
There are very few times in movies where I like edge up on my seat, and this was one of them.
Yeah.
It was so good. And the second the reveal happens that they're not at the same house, which I didn't see coming. Like, I really didn't. Like, I'm like, you idiot. Like, that's how invested I was in this movie.
Sure.
I was, and like Buffalo Bill and Susan Joy, I'm like, no, get out of there.
Yeah,
like, it turned into a full-blown, like, bullshit horror movie scene for me. I'm like, don't open that door. Like, that's, like,
Right?
I'm like, get out of the house, Clarice. Yeah, like, that was me the whole movie. And that final scene, and then down to the, and unlike in The Killing of a Sacred Deer, where it's the luckiest fucking shot on the planet, like, I believe that because Buffalo Bill is, like, literally this fucking close to her. You could see him, like, playing with her hair and shit. So, like, it was, man, it was thrilling.
So good, right?
So good.
All right, well, let's get into the questions, and we can transition with that. Favorite scene? Was that one of your guys' favorite scenes, or do you have one that you preferred more than that? Favorite scene in the movie?
Austin, go ahead.
My favorite scene was the first interaction between Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter.
Okay.
Easily.
Drives you to the core, and you know straight away how this fucking movie's gonna go.
Yeah.
The first one is certainly the most iconic, with the the nice Chianti line, I believe, is in there, and your first glimpse of Hannibal. I do like that one for what it is. Also, their third interaction is also really interesting. That's when she starts talking about her background, and the quid pro quo comes into it.
Yes.
And that, I think, is even not more interesting, but definitely on the same level, because then you really are starting to dive into it, and he's showing his skills, and that's a very psychologically interesting scene. So, yeah, both of those are for sure my tops.
My top, and this is going to be really weird, but is the American Girl scene.
Really?
When first off, probably my favorite use of the American Girl song by Tom Petty ever on screen. But that is such a nefarious way to introduce, to actually CC your character for the first, your bad guy for the first time on screen.
Yeah.
And like, as it's happening, and this is probably where it is horror. As the viewer already, bad shit's gonna happen. Like, she's like way too like, I'm just driving along, having a great old night, and then you're like, oh, this bitch is gonna die. Like, that's how I felt. And
nice.
So it's a really understated scene, but it was done perfectly. So yeah, that's my favorite scene.
Okay.
Did you guys catch real quick that he did the same?
Ted Bundy.
Yep. As kidnapping women as Ted Bundy did. Yep.
But he's really based on Ed Gein, who is, if you had to pick a favorite serial killer, Ed Gein would probably be up there for just about everybody. But
okay, well then let's switch it around and do least favorite scene. And I will go first, so you guys don't have to go first. I'd say the scenes that I did not like. Again, like, the movie's fucking great. The scenes that I didn't really get too into, her flashback scenes as a young girl, I didn't really dig. Like, I love Hannibal diving into her psychology, because the whole thing of, like, her as a girl hearing the lamb screaming and thinking that she can save this girl and sort of, get rid of those demons. But the actual flashbacks they showed of her as a young girl, I thought kind of just took away from the movie a little bit. They were a little distracting and unnecessary. I like her backstory, but not those flashback scenes. I think there were 2 of them, maybe. But how about you guys? Least favorite scene or part of the movie?
Austin?
This is going to come as a shock, I think, to most. But my least favorite scene was when he demands the lotion in the basket. And I'll explain why.
Really?
I know. I'll explain why. So, for me, we know this guy is pretty much screwed up in the head, but he knows what he's doing. He knows that he's committing bad acts. And his facial movements and structures almost make it seem like he's doubting himself when this whole thing is going on. And that took me out of the character a little bit.
Okay.
I was like, no, this dude is not sorry for whatever the hell he's doing.
Yeah.
I think you misunderstood the facial expressions.
I don't know. I just think that every time she starts screaming, he has a little bit of remorse on his face whenever he's like twitching his head.
I think he's mirroring her.
Interesting.
I
thought it was
learning.
genuine,
Okay.
and he was just conflicted. But
No,
you think it's mirroring.
Because when she yells, he cries back
That's true.
as if he's trying to copy the sound she's making.
Well, that's after. I'm talking specifically on when he's like demanding that she put the lotion in the basket.
And she's concerned in that, and so he's just mirroring her.
Okay.
I really
People
think
have thought of it
he's
that way.
mirroring her.
That's
Okay.
interesting.
Okay.
All right, next question.
This is a question I sent to you
Oh
guys
wait,
earlier.
I didn't give my least favorite.
I was going to
Shit,
say,
I'm
I
sorry.
thought you did.
The
like,
fucking handshake at the end. What was that? Why did they show that ring? Who is she engaged to? What the fuck was that all about? Why did he hold her hand all weird? Like,
That
is it
was weird,
supposed
yeah.
to be a callback to when Hannibal Lecter like slides his finger across hers? Because it didn't come across that way. It just came across as a real fucking man handshake, crushing this girl's hand for no fucking reason. And is it because he's heartbroken that she's engaged? When did she get engaged? You would think that some point in time there would have been a love interest that they would have introduced. It all fucked me. I hated that scene. I fucking hated it. All
I
right.
totally missed that
Yeah.
ring, but interesting. Because I thought it was like sort of flirty, like it was almost gentle and like weird. I'm like, this is a
It was
weird.
definitely a weird handshake.
Okay. I sent you guys this question earlier, and I really want to get into it
Yes.
before the last couple minutes here. Where does Hannibal Lecter rank in your list of all-time movie villains? And I will tell you, he is in my top 5 for sure. The other ones that I can think of are Hans Landa from Inglourious Basterds, Heath Ledger's Joker, and Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York. I would put Hannibal with those 4 as my favorite villains of all time. But AFI, American Film Institute, put out a list in the early 2000s. It was the 100-year anniversary of film in the U.S., and they put out a list of the 100 best villains and heroes. And Hannibal Lecter was number 1 on their list, ahead of Norman Bates and Darth Vader and Nurse Ratched and all these great villains. So they ranked him number 1. I think she was like the 5th best hero. But where do you guys rank Hannibal personally among all movie villains?
Austin.
Generally, not like, specific.
Yeah. 3.
Okay.
Number 3 overall?
Number 3 overall.
Who
You
are 1
gotta,
and
you gotta
2?
give us 1 and 2.
Number 1 is the Joker, and number 2 is Darth Vader.
Darth Vader's not a bad guy.
Yep.
Okay.
He is. Man.
Not a bad guy. He's just not.
Say that when he killed all those younglings.
He did!
He's not a bad
The
guy.
women! And the children, too!
Younglings. He's not a bad guy, though.
The files must be incomplete. God, we should do that movie once. It's so bad. For me, I have him behind 3 people. I have him at 4. Okay?
You have Scar.
No. Scar's
Really?
5.
Oh, okay.
Scar's 5.
Close, though.
Dude, Scar has more malice than everybody else on this list. I'm
You're
just
not
putting it
lying.
out there.
You're not
He
lying.
has 0 fucks to give.
Alright, who were ahead of him?
Okay, so I have the shark in Jaws.
Love that.
Ooh, I never even thought of that.
Love it.
You see him once, right? Otherwise, it's just the fin.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shark in Jaws. He who shall not be named.
Okay, fair.
But I feel like book Voldemort is way tougher than film Voldemort,
Way better for sure.
but needs to be in there. And then number 1 for me is Joker. And I don't think the Joker exists without Anthony Hopkins' portrayal of Hannibal Lecter.
When you guys say Joker, are you talking Heath Ledger specifically,
Yes.
or just the Joker?
Heath Ledger's Joker is the best Joker ever portrayed on film, and will always be the scariest villain in film.
Mm-hmm.
I do not disagree.
That character literally took the actor's life.
Yeah.
That's how intense of a portrayal that is.
Yep.
All right, final one then, boys. Let's do a score here.
Woohoo!
And I will not go first because I need to think for a second. I know Austin doesn't like going first. Josh, do you want to give it a score?
Yep. Also, I put The Silence of the Lambs in the title of this, which
I think it's The Silence.
it is the,
Yeah.
but everyone just calls it Silence of the Lambs.
Right.
Which just, I don't know, it's a weird thing that makes me laugh. Alright, so my highest rated movie to this point was... Is it Uncut Gems?
Uncut Gems.
It was Uncut Gems.
Yeah.
Man, alright, so I've said to you, Justin, that before, like, a 9.5 and up is when we start to get into, like, favorite movies of all time territory.
Mm-hmm.
This is better than Uncut Gems. It's better than Scott Pilgrim. This is going to sit right at that 9.5.
9.5.
Yeah.
I love it. Austin?
Oh, all right. So Uncut Gems is definitely my highest. I think it was 9.7.
That is correct.
We're giving it a 9.9, guys.
Oh, come on. You cheap bastard. Just round up.
I love this film, man. It's so good.
And you can't give it a 10? Why can't you give it that last .1?
Because I'm afraid that if I give something a 10, and if something else comes along that's greater, it has to match that performance.
Good luck finding something greater than Silence of the Lambs. What are you talking about? Oh, man.
The
was something
movie's
else.
damn near perfect.
I will do the dirty deed, and I will give it a 10.
Okay.
I was bouncing back and forth between a 9.5 or a 10, but it's just so I think Hannibal Lecter is a 50 out of 10 alone. So I remembered watching this movie again, how incredible it was on a character level, on a dialogue level, two of my favorite things. I mean, it's not Social Network 10 where it's like personal favorite movie, but just outstanding all around.
It is. Yeah. It's the best movie we've watched.
Yeah.
Hands down.
I mean, iconic in every way.
Yes.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, it's my pick next week then.
Yes.
We've gotten into this habit of doing sort of like heavy psychological thrillers, looking at, complex, drama type things.
Yeah. The Matrix, Ex Machina,
Yeah.
Uncut Gems, Silence of the
There's
Lambs.
Killing of a Sacred Deer, Goodfellas, Social Network. These
The
are all,
only fun movies we've watched are Scott Pilgrim and Tootsie.
Yeah.
Watch
We're gonna go.
Space Jam.
And Space Jam.
Yeah, Space Jam, true. Yeah, but so we're gonna mix it up. We're gonna go a little lighter this week for a movie that just came on Netflix.
Happy Gilmore!
Is it on Netflix?
No, I don't know.
I don't think I've ever seen this movie the whole way through, but I know it, and I'm actually excited to watch it. We're gonna do Airplane from 1980.
Oh,
Classic comedy,
Woo!
very classic. I don't think I've seen it the whole way, but we're gonna sit down and watch it, and then it's short and fun, and it'll be a nice palate cleanser from all this heavy stuff we've been doing.
Awesome.
So
Great film, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
so. All right, well, that wraps it up for this week's edition. Thank you guys for sticking with us. We tried to keep it a little shorter this week, but hopefully still just as engaging and with great analysis from the boys here. And we will be back next week to do the classic 1980s comedy, Airplane. So thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time on Thoughts for the Movies.